Hey, Courtney, how are you?
Hey Joe, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. Congratulations on the film. It's been such a long time since I've seen like a teenage horror movie that it's just so much fun to kind of revisit that. So,
Yeah.
first question I have for you is that I got a real like craft, Cruel Intentions, and even Jawbreaker vibe to this film. What were some of the influences that inspired you to create this film?
That's great. You kind of nailed it. Jawbreaker was definitely one. I love Cruel Intentions. I think Ryan Felipe in that movie is like just next level. I was inspired by being a cheerleader and having a mom who grew up in like a religious household. So kind of wanting to shine a light on that subject matter without, of course, singling out any religion. So you'll notice in the movie, like the religion is sort of made up, so it doesn't
Right.
offend anyone. And then also, of course, LGBT and kind of shining a light on that in a way that's very sensitive and delicate of not just like, oh, we always see like lesbians in movies kissing. Like we didn't want that. Especially Brenna and Caitlin with their characters so much wanted to tell a love story. They wanted it to be more about the love versus the sexualness of it. And I think they have achieved that and we're really proud of it. And huge supporters of just shining a light on taboo subject matter. So
Absolutely. Now, in this film, there is a clique of girls that are really running the high school. They are called the Seven Deadly Sins or the Sins. Who are the Sins?
the sins are Caitlin, Brenna, Kaylani, Carly, and Jasmine and Natalie. And each of them embody one of the seven deadly sins. So you've got Grace Carver, who is lust, and she's like everything Regina George, you know?
Right.
And then you've got Kaylani, who is Katie, and all of the girls who play the characters, they each embody their sins so well. And, Brenna, who actually I won't say too much without giving any spoilers because you guys all have to go watch the movie, but she was nominated for a Leo for her award and she was so powerful in it. And it was interesting to see, her character is pride. So she was so prideful and she's the biggest Bible thumper of all. And then the ending just like kind of shocks you. And so it's like interesting to see like what good girls do when they've gone bad and how far can we push these boundaries and really play with that.
Now, can you talk to me about the relationship between Grace and Tori? Because that really is what kind of sets off the film to let us know kind of where we are in the world.
That's for sure the biggest beelining story, the love story between Grace and Tori and how her father's not approving of it. I don't even think he really knows secretly like how much she actually does love Tori. It's supposed to be, as we said, not so much about the sexual nature of the two girls exploring, but more so just the love they have for each other, not only as lovers, but as best friends. And how taboo that is. It says early on, homosexuality is a sin in itself. And there's a lot of people who feel that it's not. I have friends who are bisexual or fully gay or, I just think there's so much in the world and we didn't want to offend anyone. We didn't want to say like, this is right or that's wrong and shove it down anyone's throats. So we just shined a light on all this subject matter and it's up for the audience's interpretation. And I think the film did a really great job of, doing that and not offending anybody because the message and the moral of the story is of the greater good. So
Absolutely. Now, this is a really smart way and creative way to really frame the seven deadly sins. What inspired that direction?
It hadn't been done before and it just kind of came to me one day where I was like, seven girls embodying seven sins would be so interesting. And like that cliquey, like jawbreaker, mean girl thing, I think just like growing up in a cheerleading squad, I really understood how that felt, but I don't talk about this often. And I actually was really bullied in high school. I was gang beat by three older girls in an alley one time and wanted to shine a light on also bullying and how important it is and how damaging it can be. So, not just having mean girls, but also girls who had empathy and who loved and cared about each other is so important too.
Can you talk to me about the challenges of writing each one of these girls and their sin with a distinct voice? Because each one does have a very distinct voice and really does kind of take on the persona of their sin, with the exception of Grace a little bit. But can you talk to me about that a little bit?
Yeah, Erin Hazelhurst and Madison Smith, my co-writers, were very great at developing uniqueness for all the girls. I think early on, it was like, okay, these are the girls, and then how can we make them diverse and unique and stand out in their own ways? And We as writers felt that we did such a good job on paper of doing that, but then when the girls actually embodied their characters and became their characters, they took it to a whole new level, and I'm so proud of them because they really went for it. You know, the research that these girls did and the hard work they put into their performances really shows.
Now, there's definitely a nature versus nurture element to the film. Can you talk to me about how that plays out into the story?
Yeah, you know, it's very much like church versus state. Like there's the church and there's the town and there's this religion, and then there's like the cops and the story and the people in the rest of the world. And it's so interesting because we have that today in today's society, where a lot of people are very much like anti-LGBT and they're very much the church and this is the way. And so then there's the nature and the nurture of what comes into that, and psychologically what is right and wrong and who's to say, you know. And there's all of these like thoughts and theories floating around. And what I love about the film is it never says like, this is the way you should think and this is what's right and this is what's wrong. And I think in nature versus nurture, it's so important to explore that, because your opinions and your thoughts and beliefs are always changing. But the most important thing is to know right from wrong. And, you know, either it's nature versus nurture. We always know what is right and what is good and what is evil. So I think the film does exactly that.
Now, Grace's family almost feels like a cult themselves in many ways. Can you talk to me about how her family almost parallels the 7 deadly sins, girls?
How do you mean?
Well, I feel like obviously her father's very controlling, and they have a very distinct message in their household, and we get to see Grace kind of rebel out of that a little bit. Can you talk to me about how, well, I guess in her rebellion, about how the both kind of like they're on different sides of the spectrum? Obviously, Grace goes about it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense a bit?
How she kind of rebels against her family?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't exactly know how you mean though. Like, how does she rebel against her family?
Right. Like she definitely, after having that talk, that family dinner talk in the beginning of the film, can you talk to me about how Grace kind of acts out and rebels against her family?
Yeah, you know, I think there's something to be said that when you grow up with a strict parent, it almost makes you like want to rebel against that. Like they say that strict parents create sneaky children. And I think the more kind of freedom you give your child, the more honest they're going to be, the less likely they're going to be to sneak out, go to parties, want to do bad things. But if you're really strict, it's almost like, you know, playing hard to get. It's like, you can't have this. It makes you want it more. So Grace is so curious about the outside world. And they say like these worldly people that she can't hang out with. And it's like, Grace thinks that some of these people are nicer to her and better for her and her mental health than her own family. So she wants to know, like, why is it so bad? And she wants to go explore that. So I think the more strict her parents are on her, the more it makes her want to rebel. And when her father says to her, like, you and your posse are parading around calling yourself the 7 deadly sins, that's when she's like, that's it. Like, we are going full ham with this. You know, she gets her braids out and her naughty little outfit, and then it just kind of makes her get into this power where she almost loves it. And I think because she's been so controlled, she wants to overpower her father. Like, she's tired of her father doing this. And I think that's the sole pivotal reason for her rebellion.
You know, I feel like there's so much room to explore these characters because when we get a taste of them, but was this always meant to be a feature film rather than like a television series? Because I feel like we can explore so much more of these characters, whether it be a prequel or even a follow-up, really. But was it the intention always to make it a film?
It's so interesting that you say that. Yes, it was always intended to be a film, but now I'm kind of going, I agree with you. We should have made it a TV series because there's so much room for exploration just in each individual sin that in 95 minutes, you really don't get enough of it. So I was speaking with our distributor and we're saying if this does really well, it would be fun to kind of pitch it to a network and see who might want to pick it up. It could be like the next Pretty Little Liars. Like it just goes on and on. Of course, we would have to restart from the beginning because most of the sins now, not spoiler alert, are dead. So yeah, it would be really interesting to explore that. I think there's so much room. There's so many things we wanted to do with the film that we didn't get to, like montages of the girls actually committing their sins and really going far with them would have been, you know.
Yeah, and even some of the the supporting characters we get to meet in the film, like the principal or the sheriffs. Like I feel like there's so much there that we just scratched the layers. I'd love to see it as a television series. Now, this is your feature directorial debut. Can you talk to me about the experience of making this feature film and maybe some of the lessons you learned along the way? Because you were involved in production on many levels, correct?
Yeah, maybe too many levels. I was driving gear trucks to and from set, bringing crafty, sleeping 2 hours a night, lost 15 pounds. It was crazy. I think the experience of making this was very hands-on, and I'm so grateful for that, because now I get to know like how hard it is to be a transport driver, like how much work it takes to do crafty. I think like having your hand in everything and really like diving in on your first makes you so grateful later in life for having a proper team and people who are there to support you and bending over backwards, working these long, ridiculous hours. But that's the art that we love, and it's why we do it. So it was a very tough, stressful experience, but I wouldn't have had it any other way.
Now, I want to talk about Caitlin and Brianna for a second, because really all the girls are phenomenal in this film, but those two mainly really stand out to me. Can you talk to me about what they brought to the roles that may have surprised you or that may have not been on the page?
Yeah, Caitlin actually came to us with so much grace, and it's funny because her character's name is Grace. She was so precious about her decisions. Like, Grace wouldn't say that, and I think Grace loves Tori, and it was Grace, and it was actually Brenna Coates, who played Tori, and Caitlin, who came to me with so much about their love story, and they made it be this precious thing between the two of them, that it really was much more about the love than the sexuality. And for that, I just commend them, because that's like performing at its highest level. So she really understood and did a lot of research of how it would feel to have a father who's a pastor, and the things that she would say and how she would talk and how she would walk. And Caitlin is such a talented actor, so she really, really grasped that and ran with it. And Brenna is such a powerhouse. She was nominated for a Leo Award, and her scene, the sheep and the wolf, she really nails it and blew us away. Like, I get chills watching her still to this day, and she can blow a roof off a theater, that girl. I mean, the ensemble is so incredibly talented. Even, Brenna Coates is Kim Coates' daughter, and her and Carly are very much from the theater. And so we're lucky to have actors who really understand the craft and can, dive in deep into these juicy roles that are so challenging.
I want to talk about Brenna for a second, because she told me something really interesting, is that that you gave her the direction that her and Grace, or Aubrey and Grace, were best friends originally. Now, we don't see this in the film, but are there any other like backstories that you kind of wanted to explore a little bit in the course of the film?
Yeah, I had told her to play with the idea that Grace was her best friend originally, so she would care so much more about Grace. Other backstories, that Tori comes from a very, rough upbringing. She's been in and out of foster systems. She comes to this new school, like, she's seen a lot. So she's not necessarily the girl you would expect to be in this, like, all like schoolgirl world. She was just kind of plopped there and has to now exist. And so it's all new for her. All of the girls had such interesting backstories. You get to see a sprinkle. Like, Katie's really rich. She's really spoiled. She's always going on yacht trips. And Stacy, she's always like going with her and is super envious. And there's just like all the girls' backstories where you hear it in the lockers. Like, those are the worlds that they exist in that we never really get to see. So it'd be fun to really explore that. And how the sheriff's been trying to have a baby, and then she gets pregnant, and like there's all this backstory that's so interesting. And like the sheriff and the detectives used to work together, and they don't like him, and they come in, and like they're these like naughty detectives who are probably sinning in their own right. Yes. Actually, we have this gold footage. I've never talked about this, but Michael Eklund and Lachlan Monroe did a 20-minute improv for us in a car as detectives. It's rated R, so we can't put it in the movie. But the things that they got into and just the storyline they came up with is so comical. It made me laugh so hard. So maybe one day we'll like release that special footage with their permission, of course.
Right. Well, Courtney, look, now we need this to be a television series as well. Because like, you're right, completely right. I felt the same thing with the sheriffs and the FBI detectives. Like, we just scratch the surface with a lot of these characters, but they're so rich. So I'd love to see it develop. Maybe
we should headline it that, like, audiences screaming for The Sinners to become a series. Like, let's push that narrative, and maybe it'll happen.
Deal. Well, look, congratulations on this film. It's a lot of fun, mainly because it transported me back to the early millennium, the turn of the millennium, when we were getting those teenage horror movies, and this is right up there with them. So thank you so much for your time, Courtney. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Really nice speaking with you, Joe.